documenting the front lines of the AI revolution, the AI Rebels podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. We are very familiar. We have a familiar face on the show with us again today. Bryce, welcome back. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I'm stoked to be back. Good talking with you guys again.
Yeah, we're excited to, for those listeners who didn't see the first episode with Bryce, Bryce, well, I don't want to give anything away, but Bryce, student in Utah, developing an app to essentially, it was called Pendien. You can go look it up, season 1. Language translation. Is that fair? High level language translation?
Yeah. Specifically like databases for low resource language translation. But yeah, right along those same lines.
Okay. And we're very excited. We were talking just before we started recording, and there have been some big pivots in the recent months. Can you tell us, like, since we talked, it was probably 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
That's about right, yeah.
At that point in time, you were a student at Utah State University developing an app called Pendien. What's happened now? Where are you at?
Yeah, so a lot has changed. Like you said, I'm no longer a student. I'm now a dropout. And now I'm working on a
Dropout
couple
life.
different projects. Yeah. Figured it would make a better story. So anyway, I started off with those databases, and the original idea for Pendien had even been something different like months before that. So things have like definitely changed a lot. So I got these databases together. I started approaching Google, Microsoft, anyone I could think of that was buying language data. And I was just like, I don't know, reaching out to them constantly, like seeing if they would be interested in buying these data sets. Finally talked to one person and they just said, "Oh, we're busy, we're not interested." And like that was it. That was the entire conversation. Come to find out months later, the language that I had like already built the database for, Kekchi, they released Google Translate in like a couple months after that. So it was like a month or two ago that they released. So I felt kind of gypped. I was like, oh man, they beat me to it. I kind of moved on from that space for a little while. And I decided to start looking into like automating what my previous job was. So I was a trade analyst previously. And I would do a lot of customs brokerage work. And there's a specific thing called HTS classifications in that. And I started looking into like, how can we make automation better? Because traditional approaches had been fully reliant on machine learning, and studies that have been done on them show that they're only like 70% correct. And so there's like a big margin of error there. If you get this wrong, you're getting delayed shipments, you're getting fines, legal fees. So that's really what I went to setting out building, and that's what we have right now that I'm mostly focused on. And on the side, I've picked up the language translation again and actually built a framework for low resource translation that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want first, well done, not being discouraged with that first freaking Google, they're just, they like to do that. But can you tell us about that experience? Like, what was it like when you saw that release from Google? What did you feel? What was going through your head?
I was kind of bummed, obviously, because I'd been spending like months like getting data, like figuring out different techniques to extrapolate, all these things. And then that got released. I was like, well, that's done. I pretty much just like threw in the cards right there. I was like, well, this is my main, like, and I'd done some tests with it and it looked pretty good. And so I was like, well, yeah, they've kind of got their foot in the door here. So I kind of stepped out of the space like immediately.
When you say stepped out of the space, do you mean, like, what does that mean?
So I just like, I had all the data and everything, and I was like going hard, like trying to outreach to these different companies. And once I saw that, I was like, you know what? And I just started working on other projects, and just kind of like put it on the back burner for a while.
Yeah. Got it.
So this HTS classification, is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's right.
So what is your approach to automating that? I'd be really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, so like I said, kind of traditional approaches are all about natural language processing. They take like certain
Yeah.
factors of that, and then they have basically like a decision tree that will classify it. So I wanted to approach it more like I would approach the problem as a human classifier. And so instead of taking import data in the past, because those codes are constantly changing, new regulations get passed, everything, I wanted to get the most up-to-date data. So where was the direct truth there? So I pulled all the court rulings from the government database. So we got a couple 100,000 court rulings. We've got, so in classification, it goes by section, chapter, and then there are also explanatory notes. And then you have the subheadings and headings. And so I took all of the documents for all of that stuff, and I made a couple different databases with all of that different information organized. And then I just built a way that the LLM can go through and reference all of those different databases and pull in every relevant document and then build up precedent for every court ruling.
Wow.
Based on the court rulings and everything. And also attached on like an image to text model, or a text to image model, or whoa, I got that totally mixed up. All right, image to text model. So I can take in product sheets, and it does both optical character recognition and image recognition. So it can take in technical product sheets, transform that into the information that we would need in text, and then from that text, then it would go reference all the court rulings and everything. So it's kind of a different approach, but based on the testing that we've done, it's doing pretty well. So
that's awesome. So are you working on a? Or are you about to ask the same question, Jake?
Go for it.
Are you working on are you working with a team on this, or is it just you still?
Yeah, so I now have a co-founder. He's a full stack developer. His name's Tanner, and he's up at Utah State still. And then I've been doing just all like the data modeling and business side. So
right on. That's exciting.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah, there's two of you now. That's fun.
yeah, pretty exciting.
So this HTS, like, what is the use? Like, is this a subscription that a company like a Big Four accounting firm would pay for, and they would just be able to run securities through this?
Yeah, so right now the couple of beta testers that we have right now are all logistics firms. So and customs brokerage firms. So I guess we have one customs brokerage firm and two logistics firms. And they have people that usually go by hand and assign these codes in. And to get like a really good, like solid ruling on it, basically, you've either got to submit it to the Customs and Border Patrol and wait weeks to get something back, or you go by hand and you build up like what the model does. And when I was doing this by hand, it would take, for like the simplest items, it would take like 15 minutes. For complex items, you're hour and a half or longer, easy.
Okay.
And so our model averages about, it does 20 seconds, but we can spin up as many different as we can do, or we can, spin up as many different models as we need. And so it averages about 2 seconds or less per item.
It averages 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So 50. Okay, let's just do the. Hold on. Let's just do the math here real quick, like just for fun. So if we do 15 minutes times 60 seconds, that's 900 seconds. And you're doing it in 2. How do we do the math there? 2 divided by 900. That's a 0.02% of the time. That's nuts. I bet these companies are loving it.
Yeah, everyone that has been on it so far has loved it. We're just trying to get like an API right now, and we're trying to get like a Shopify app to integrate with all of like these drop shippers. Because starting in November, there's going to be a law passed that removes the de minimis law right now. So right now, any shipment under $800 in value doesn't get a tariff code, and it's not tariffed. Starting in November, 1 billion shipments per year that fall under that threshold that are imported to the United States are going to need that. And so we're trying to get ready for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you guys are hitting the market at the right time.
Seriously.
Sweep up all these drop shippers.
Jeez. So, yeah, could we see it? Is it something you could share so we can see how it works?
Yeah, let me share my screen with you guys and I can show you.
So you have three, while you're pulling that up, you have 3 active customers right now.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, so we're just going to do it the image way. The CSV way is the way that we're averaging 2 seconds per thing. This one, basically you just put in like whatever product code it is. You upload the product sheet itself. Let me get the demo. So these are endo-jaw biopsy forceps for Olympus Medical. And then it's going through our image to text model right now. I'll take a couple seconds, and then it will pull up basically a way that you can like go through and double check all the information that it pulls.
I see.
So our product is this is our description, this is the material, the end use, and it's a finished good. It all looks good. So I'm going to do classify. And right now it's going through and it's referencing those, 350-ish thousand unstructured data documents from the government. And it's going to pull up, build a rationale, and then it's going to give you your codes. It's going to pull in section 301, so show like what it would be from China. And then it will show like all trade agreements for the United States for that item. So obviously I've ran it quite a few times, but the interesting thing is every run is independent of another one. So I can update the data with a completely new data set for a different country tomorrow, and it would do it just for that country. So this is the HDS that pulled up 9018, 90800. And if we go to that, we're actually going to go to the court ruling that it cites. There we go. So this is a tariff classification of disposable plastic forceps from China. So that's what it referenced to make it. And here's the rationale. So it says the FB215U endo-jaw large 2.8 biopsy forceps is a medical instrument made of stainless steel, plastic components. Wow. So it cites GRI 1, court ruling this one, explanatory notes for chapter 90, and then it gives that classification.
This is a unique rationale written for this run, right?
That's right, yeah. So actually, if we look at other ones, it writes it a little bit different every time it does it. And so it kind of adds like that little bit of randomness into each one. But because it goes through and reasons like a human does, it's able to do things it's more flexible and it's more accurate.
That's super interesting. So if you guys, what's kind of like the, I guess, scoring algorithm you're using to determine the performance? Is it just purely like kind of human preference testing? Like, hey, do you guys like this, generated code or not? Or is it you have some sort of, fake scenario that you run it through? And
so right now it's just human preference, because the thing with like these rulings is technically there could be like several that could work for an item, and the classifier's job is finding what is most correct. And so basically we pulled in a couple different machine learning models that are on the market right now. We ran like different items through them, and there's some that are obviously incorrect that the like other machine learning models will do. For example, like a silicone O-ring. Silicone, it's like, should it be classified as a rubber or a plastic? And what normal people would classify as is the opposite of what the government actually classifies it on based on court rulings. And so that's an easy one that we can just be like, okay, you guys are obviously wrong on all of these ones.
Yeah.
And you can immediately rule out like they're incorrect for a couple examples like that. And then for the rest of them, we just do human preference testing. So we'll pull up a couple different classifications. We'll show the rationale as like an example of like what they can go reference, and then give the human preference of all the different codes that were pulled up. And then ours wins 9 times out of 10.
Jeez.
That's awesome. Yeah. I like this application a lot, because I think that it's a good application of language models' strengths. Like, there's way too many people who are trying to force language models into like a very deterministic workflow, where it's like you need the exact same output every single time. So like, this is a really interesting and really compelling use case where it's like, hey, there's a lot of subjectivity in this process already. And so, the fact that language models are a bit random and a bit subjective is actually a little bit of an advantage almost, when, given the proper information and proper guidance. How long did it take you to get to this point?
So this has been, we ideated this in the spring, and then basically it's been like a slow building process because I had to completely redo the way I was thinking about this originally because I was
Yeah.
trying to follow like traditional approaches, which just are not going to be good, especially because this is an election year and tariffs could be changing pretty dramatically
Yeah,
in the next little
Right.
while.
Yeah.
I had to completely like reframe how I was thinking of it. And especially with what you were saying about like the subjectivity, I was having a hard time getting those deterministic answers for an item consistently. And so when I realized, okay, the rationale itself can change as long as it's citing correct information, but the end goal, the end classification needs to be the same every single time. So how do I
Yeah.
get that deterministic answer even while using like something that has like a little bit of randomness in the research phase itself? And so getting those things to work together, it's been pretty tough, but pretty excited about where it's come, you know.
Jeez. So this is so it's two people right now. Do you have additional like how are you targeting customers right now?
So right now we've been live for like less than a week.
And you have 3 customers already?
Yeah, just been cold calling. So lots of cold
Love it.
calls, cold emails, reaching out. I don't even think we're on like, if you look up Tarifflo on Google, I don't even think you'll find it yet. Like we're like early, like, so it's just been like kind of guerrilla warfare trying to find
Yeah.
people to get it. But it's been interesting. Every time I've talked to somebody that knows the issue and experiences it, it's like, I don't feel like I'm selling anything. Like this is
Yeah.
literally like, we're just streamlining their entire processes, you know? We're
Yeah,
helping them be able to handle much more customers. And so the value add is just like so much more.
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, this is a perfect example of where AI is taking us. I think, like there are these tasks that are just a time suck, and it's not even a huge, it's not like a human's going to be better than this model, and it's a huge time suck. You think of the cost savings if it's taking someone from 15 minutes to 2 hours for each one of these. I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh, no, AI, don't take this task from me. Like,
Right.
I think everyone's going to be more than happy to let the AI do its thing, and we'll just inspect it to make sure it's right. It's awesome.
Exactly. Like human in the loop, like, yeah, we still need those people to like double check, make sure everything's good. I think that's just an important thing in general. You know, I don't think we're to the point yet where we can just like fully give the reins to AI
Yeah.
and trust it. But I think at a certain point, and it's already like to that point for me, honestly, with the classifications, like, where I can just give it to it and then it will give the answer back. And I like trust it. Like I'll go through and double check it because that's what I'm supposed to do. But like I know it's right. And so I don't know. Yeah, that's the hope, just to get rid of all of these monotonous, especially with unstructured data handling tasks for
Yeah.
humans, and give us more like the high level thinking tasks rather
Mm-hmm.
than the actual manual labor tasks.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, is there any, as far as next steps go for Terraflow, is it now just scaling it? Is there any additional work being done on the data sets necessarily, or now is it more like, okay, we're live, let's just get it out there?
Yeah, so we've got kind of a couple different things. I see this being like a global impact company, honestly, because um, like the United States is the biggest importing company or country in the world, which is why we're starting here. And I live here, so that helps, you know.
Convenient, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of convenient. But really, the plan here is we're starting with logistics firms. We're moving into importing companies that import high volumes of goods to the United States. We're looking at like eBay. We're looking at these different like sites, yeah, you know, Shopify accounts, things like that, where we can integrate it in and make it seamless to that process. And then we're looking at also expanding internationally. So you look at countries like Madagascar. Madagascar they have a 50% inaccuracy rate in the classifications. So the fraud rate basically is ridiculous. They're losing 15% of their tax income collected because of misclassified items. And so it's like kind of the chicken and the egg problem. Like they don't have enough people that they're hiring to go through and audit these things. So they're not collecting more money, and so they can't, whatever, right?
Right.
So I see this being applied to government contracts for emerging market countries that have high levels of fraud, import fraud, and being able to help them reclaim some of those fraudulent import like tax dollars. And obviously we'll be able to boost their economy with this, and kind of those companies that have been like skimming off the top or like doing these like illegal things will get caught and fined, and then we'll obviously be taken off the top as well, a percentage of what we're able to help the government save. So I see this as both in the private sector and in the government sector, and in every country in the world. So that's really where we're trying to go.
It's awesome.
Question. No, thank you. It was a good one. So on the topic of kind of selling internationally, are you planning? Here was my question. Do you believe that it's going to be easier to train people to check the output rather than do the work themselves?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So like in the output that I showed you guys, it has a like the court ruling that it cites, and it has a link to it. You can click that and look, and it has a similar item. It's been previous classified. It's like super easy for somebody to go check that. And you can go click on the link for the code itself, and you can look at that, and it's like obviously like the right one, and anybody can go through and follow through that thing, look up everything that they don't know, and be able to check that. I could have somebody that doesn't know anything about HTS codes and get them like up to speed in 10, 15 minutes of how to use the system and how to go through and double check it.
So that's another huge benefit is just the ability to train people faster. It reduces logistics costs for the company, like internally, not just with their shipping, but with their internal company logistics. It gets much better. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned something, Bryce. You said you would get potentially a percentage of the money you help the government or company save. Is that how you're planning on doing it? Is like a fee within like a percentage clause of some kind, or like how does your pay structure work with this? Because it is something where potentially you could be saving them or making them lots and lots of money.
Yeah, so that was specifically for like the government sector. I think it would be like a cost savings benefit where we could just like onboard them on for free, get integrated into their systems for free. And then, every audit that they make where they're able to like recover money from that, then we would just take like a, percent, fraction of a percent, whatever. But with companies right now, we're doing on a subscription basis. So they pay monthly, and they get a certain number of tokens that goes to like classifications, and then they can get more of those as they use more. And then when we're selling to like single item importers, we can sell just by the item. It's more expensive, but if you just need like one classification, for example, like you're importing this one random good that you invented, and you don't want to like spend the cost of hiring a broker for $200 an hour, then you can just boom, get your classification, put it in, get things going.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And how did your previous experience with the database language, Pendien, how has that affected your approach here?
I think just thinking about not just language translation, but like all of these problems has got me like excited about just reading papers. Cause like, to be totally honest, guys, I'm like not that smart. Like I'm not that intelligent, but there are people in the world that are wicked intelligent, and they publish papers. And some of these papers are groundbreaking, like world changing like ways of looking at problems that get like 5 views, and 2 of those views are like the person that published, like it's all their moms that have looked at it.
Yeah, right.
And so I think the biggest thing that I've learned through this process is just like finding, like, these things have already been invented. We just need to find the papers on them, find the research on them, understand the research that they've done, and then combine that with other research that you found, and then you can make some pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world out there now.
It's a Wild
So
West.
I was curious, and I think that maybe you had mentioned something about this earlier. But with these classification codes, when they are sent over to, I don't know who handles them, U.S. Department of State, I don't know who handles those, Department of Commerce, whoever, are those immediately kind of validated by federal government employees, or is it just kind of like the honor system? Like, okay, like, we believe that you classified this properly, but if we find out later that you've been classifying it improperly, then you're in trouble. We're going to slap some fines on you.
Yeah, so it's with Customs and Border Patrol, and it's basically like if you've ever like left the country and you've come back and
Yeah.
you've brought stuff, and you've got to fill out like your little duty form and like, oh, what'd you bring, like all this stuff. And sometimes you'll get audited with that. So sometimes they'll go through and actually look at like the things that you've brought in and make sure that you filled it out right. But that doesn't get checked like insanely consistently. To be fair, like there are 11 billion products, dollars worth of products imported to the United States every day.
Yeah.
And so for them to like go through and manually check all of those, I mean, obviously it's like pretty insane. But the audits that do happen, they're like, a lot of times there will be fines. You have to repay things. You can even be blocked from importing if it's consistent.
Got it. Okay. So you're sold on the AI space. It seems like you're sticking around.
Oh, I love it.
Good to see.
It's so fun.
It's good to see.
Bryce, you're this young AI founder. You're building this company. Are there any AI tools that you personally use or love just like on a day-to-day basis, whether it's for your own personal enjoyment, whether it's business related? Are there any tools that you like?
Yeah, so I use actually 3 different ones for a mix of like research and then just random questions, and then even to like speed up coding sometimes. So I use the new GPT model that was just released, like the O1 preview. And then I use the Claude 3.5. I love the Claude 3.5, like long form and like reasoning. It does really well. And then I use Perplexity for most of my research. And Perplexity basically is just like, the vector store of the entire internet that it pulls in. So I love that.
Yeah, those are solid. The big ones.
Have you used Cursor at all for coding?
I actually haven't.
You should check it out. There are people who are bigger fans of it than I am, but it is very cool and really nice. It just gives you, access to ChatGPT and Sonnet code completions, like in it's basically VS Code with code completions. It's pretty cool though. So with this most recent venture, you also mentioned that you have another thing in the works, kind of calling back to your work with low resource languages from earlier this year. I'd be really interested to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, so kind of what got me into the low resource languages is I lived in Guatemala for a year as a missionary. I loved those people. It was difficult for me being there because you would see kids reading in Spanish fluently, but they didn't understand Spanish because in school they would learn how to read Spanish and not their native tongue. And so it was my goal there is by the end of my lifetime, I'm hoping that there are book clubs with Lord of the Rings and Kekchi. Like I just think that would be so cool, and so I had this database collected, right? I had like 100,000 language pairs that I had like put together and gone through and like validated and everything. And so a couple of weeks ago, I actually got taken to lunch by a translation company that had known I was working on this thing previously. And they were like, hey, you should pick this back up. Like, we want to partner with you, or we want to like, potentially be a customer for you. And so it kind of like lit a fire under me. I was like, you know what? I think I could do this. Like, and with what I had learned building Tarifflo, I actually approached the problem in a similar way that I had approached Tarifflo, which was completely different than traditional neural machine translation, like ways of going about the problem. And so I didn't know how it would work, honestly. I just kind of, on a Saturday, I just took like, the entire day from the morning till night and was just working on this thing. I started testing it and I was like, holy smokes, like this is good. Like I know Kekchi pretty well, but I'm not like the greatest. And so I wanted to like validate that it was like actually good. So I translated like the first page of Lord of the Rings, and then I translated a bunch of like medical text and then some legal text. And I sent it to a couple of my buddies that are in the translation space. And then my mission president actually still lives in Guatemala. And I was like, hey, like, is this good? And the feedback I got from all of them was like, these translations are perfect. Maybe I would change like one word here.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, all right, like this is it. Like, because traditionally you need like 10 million translation pairs to do like a good neural machine translation model at a baseline. But with difficult languages like Kekchi, where it has like weird grammatical rules and conjugations and everything, I didn't even think it was going to be possible with 10 million. And so now that I got this, I'm like, man, this is sweet. So I did it in Spanish as well, just to like prove in a higher resource language that the same approach could be used. And then right now I'm working on Navajo, Quiche, a bunch of, and like 60 other low resource languages. So.
Wow.
That's fascinating. And so obviously I'm sure that you don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce here. But I'm really curious to hear about like what's kind of the procedure you've developed. And again, if that's giving away too much and there's stuff that you feel like you need to sit on for now and keep hidden, totally understand, will not be offended.
Yeah, so I guess I won't say too much, but the one thing I will say is a network of agents approach to solving complex tasks. That's kind of all I'll say.
It is fascinating how much that's coming up recently. Like I feel like when ChatGPT first launched and with ChatGPT 3.5 and 4, agents were not ready at all. Like the ones that were hypothetically possible were going to be way too expensive to run. But it feels like more and more like just incremental improvements in the models have made agent approaches a lot more reasonable. And I also think that there's a lot better infrastructure built up around building agents now as well. Because I've heard basically that exact same answer from a lot of friends recently on, when I asked them like, hey, how did you solve this problem? So yeah, it's fascinating to hear that yet again.
Yeah. Bryce, for our listeners, can you just give like a high level summary of what the network of agents approach is?
Sure. So basically, like think about it as like a corporate team, right? You've got the CEO and he directs like the VPs or like you got your C-suite that directs like the VPs of like each individual department. And then they direct like managers, and those managers direct like individual kind of like workers that work on like specific tasks. So by combining like all of the information from the entire organization and funneling it to the top, you're able to achieve like much more than one person would be able to do on their own. So using the same approach with large language models will it improves drastically the outputs.
That's super exciting.
I'm sure there's a lot going on under the hood that that's exciting. That's cool.
Have you ever thought about writing some papers of your own on some techniques that you use?
I've definitely thought about it. I don't know if I will. At least not yet. I think it's just so new right now. I just want to like build as much as I can. But to be fair, the amount of people in the world that care enough to build something and then try to like monetize it, and I think it's like pretty pretty low. So I don't know. Maybe in the next couple of years I'll write a paper on it, but for now, just kind of sitting on it.
Nice. Keep our eyes out for it.
Yeah. With these low resource languages, though, with this company, assuming this approach keeps working, you're able to churn these out. What are you going to use it for? How are you going to approach this? How are you going to put this into actual use and circulation?
So this is definitely more on like humanitarian side. Like these languages, for the most part, aren't going to be like super lucrative. Like there's not like lucrative advertising money or whatever.
Right.
These people are indigenous, like poor. So the idea right now is, well, both helping like organizations that do high volumes of translation to these lower resource languages. You think like the EU, you think the Church of Jesus Christ, you think of Jehovah's Witnesses. That have a lot of different people like in these different groups that they want to be able to, when they make like a publication or they make a statement or they make there's like a speech, they want it translated into these languages. And so being able to have it instantly and accurately translated for all of their people, like that becomes very beneficial. As to like application, a lot of people also in these languages prefer like audiovisual. You think like it's like the early days of YouTube for indigenous language speakers, right? Like there's a couple things in their language and not very much is out there for them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm looking to partner with some text to speech, either companies or individuals that are able to do low resource language text to speech. And then we can do voice cloning of like the speaker's voice. And so we can automatically go through and dub like YouTube videos or,
cool.
Whatever it is into those people's target language. Because, with literacy rates as low as they are for these languages, like honestly, like videos will be more impactful.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. It's going to be...
Go ahead, Sven.
Go ahead, Jake. I was just going to make a... Yeah.
I was just going to say, I just love like both of your ventures right now are from your background. I think that's a trend where we're seeing the most success. I mean, I think this is in general, but also in like the AI space. Like you're able to ideate and then act and ship things so fast if you're familiar with the space, just because there's these tools available to you where you can actually create something. And one, how cool is it that you're building this startup for HTS security, automation, and then you have this on the side and you're able to actually do that. I think that speaks to your business models and how you're able to get so much done using AI. Anyway, I just think it's cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the space. Definitely in like the perfect time of the world right now for being able to do these things. Like 5 years ago, this would have never been possible. Like it would have taken, a lot of people working together with like large amounts of data collection specialists, everything to make this possible. So I honestly just feel blessed like these tools are available now. And I just think it's fun to mess around with them.
Have you seen that XKCD meme about identifying birds? Let me pull it up because it is exactly what you just said.
That's sweet. I haven't seen it. I'm excited.
When it usually takes a photo of the app. Yeah, anyways, you guys can read it. But yeah, exactly what you just said. Like all of this stuff, like there's so much now in ML AI that, like you said, 5 years ago was literally completely impossible. And is now it's just like, oh, yeah, that's just Tuesday. Like, oh yeah, let me rig up an app real quick that is capable of identifying any bird in the world by its head. Like it's insane the force multiplier that AI has become so quickly. Because for so long it just felt like it was like, it's like, oh hey, like here's a couple cool things it can do. It's going to take me 3 years to put it into production. And now it's it's so fast to get out there.
Yeah. In 6 months you've built literally from ideation a company and product. Like it's amazing. Bryce, what we just speak to so many founders, and I think a lot either have been, are currently, or will be in a similar spot as you were when Google released Kekchi and you had to pivot. What advice would you give to those who either are currently going through that, or especially as these giant companies get more and more involved, it'll happen more frequently? So what advice would you give to people that are working and have that their legs swept out from under them like that?
I think if you can build something and you've learned like that process, like you can build something else like very quickly. Just like applying your learning to like other aspects, finding areas that are going to be untouched, and then finding areas that these like in the future, building things that won't be overtaken by GPT-10 or whatever. Think about like how long it takes to train something, how you can get data that's up to date, and what areas like the up to date data is like crucial for, and close the loop on your models of like your data collection. Um, I don't know. I think there are a couple different approaches that you can take, but I would just say like keep learning. Like that's the biggest thing right now. As we keep learning, it's like that's the exciting part. So I mean, if your idea didn't work out, go come up with 10 more. Ask ChatGPT for a couple more.
And something that I want to point out with AI is that I feel like with each step of learning, really what you're doing is taking 2 or 3 steps, because you take one step and then you're able to use ChatGPT to generate more complicated code, or perform more complicated automations, etc. And yeah, it's going to be insane when 5 years from now I can spin up a mini Spencer and I'm like, I don't want to work today, like I'm going to make mini Spencer do it. He's doing all my job today.
Yeah, exactly. Bryce, you said something super interesting. You said try to identify something that won't be taken over by ChatGPT or whatever model or company, large company. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how to identify a need or gap needing filled. Like how do you do that? How do you identify something that won't be taken over in the short term?
So I think there are a couple different things you have to look for. One, like I had mentioned, that has data that updates consistently. You think model training times take months. What's something that changed over the last couple months that your answer would change between, that amount of time? So I think another one is noise. So because of the way that language models works, your scholarly articles are getting as much weight oftentimes as some dude on Reddit. And so how can we make sure that the data that it's referencing and outputting is like the quality data that we're looking for? And how can I make that more definitive rather than like take out the guesswork of it? So I think there's that part of things, especially as models are getting trained on more and more synthetic data. I think that will become more and more crucial. Like the predictions will become better, and like the next word predictions for it will become like super good, but there's going to be so much noise in the data that it's going to struggle at certain tasks. And so if you can really dial in onto a specific niche that you can provide the data to it for, then you're able to improve things quite a bit, I think, and have an edge. So I would say those two things.
Yeah.
It sounds very familiar to a lot of what we've heard from people, which is that there's been a lot of, over the last 15 years, there's been a lot of talk about like a data economy and information economy. And I think that we're actually finally hitting that point with AI. Because previous it's like, yeah, sure, like we have a ton of this data. We had petabytes on petabytes on petabytes of data, but like only terabytes of it was really useful. And now we're finally hitting the point where we can make the rest of it useful as well. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Bryce, what do you think thinking about the last 6 months where you're here now, where do you see yourself in 6 months with these different ventures, things going on?
So I think I'll still be working on both of them. But I've got another one that I'm like super excited about, and so I'm probably gonna be doing that on the weekends now. Yeah, it's a curse. I need to like focus on one thing. So I'll be building up a sales team for the one. I just think I need to balance like the technical and like the business, you know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like meditative for me.
It's the
We'll
founder
bring you on in
struggle.
6 months so you can talk about your third edition of
Yeah,
whatever that is.
exactly. Yep. Yeah, love
Yeah,
it.
I'm super excited about that actually. There are like terabytes of like I was talking about those articles like PhD dissertations
Mhm.
articles at the archive from Cornell. They've got terabytes of that information. And so my idea, and I've already built out like how it's going to work. I just need to like get the money to do it. But um, it's just applying the same approach of a network of agents to information retrieval from those and be able to do like long responses. So instead of just like 20-second response time, you can have it searching for months and finding like new approaches to like problems or new
Oh,
like if you
interesting.
want to do low resource language translation, it will go find all of like the articles about low resource translation, but it'll also look at AI articles. It'll also look at any other applications in other spaces and try to move those into your space. um, so anyway, that's what I'm
Nice.
hoping for in the future. But
All right, stay tuned.
Yeah. All right. Jake, are there any other questions that you were wanting to ask? I think that I've covered all mine.
Yeah, I think I'm good. Lots going on, Bryce. That's
Yeah.
exciting.
No, thanks for coming back on. This was
Yeah.
a lot of fun to have you back.
And
And
Bryce, can you remind just for listeners if they want to, follow this journey of yours, you're churning out cool ideas and companies. Uh, what's the best way for them to follow you?
yeah, so my LinkedIn is at Bryce Judy, BRYCEJUDY, and then you can see our website at tarifflo.com, and you can follow Tarifflo on LinkedIn as well. It's TARIFFLO. So that'll probably be the best way to stay in touch.
Perfect.
awesome. Thank you so much for coming back on. It was great to have you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Bryce.
thank you guys.
We'll stay tuned for the next iteration of everything.
Yeah, if that makes